In today's Republican, masslaw.com, for those of you who are technologically involved with the universe, has this story by Bob Sahlberg. He is an Associated Press writer. In a speech Tuesday to the Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce, Democratic House Speaker, that of course the House of Representatives here in Massachusetts, Robert DeLeo, listed a bill known officially as the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act as an early priority in the current legislative session. This story also says that an agreement among state lawmakers, business leaders, and an advocacy group could pave the way for new accommodations for workers in Massachusetts who are pregnant or nursing mothers. The measure also seeks to prevent an expecting or new mother from being demoted or forced to take involuntary leave. Here with us to discuss this is Northampton's own Liz Friedman. She has been for a long time the lead advocate for the Pregnant Women's Protection Act. Tell us where this stands. Tell us why and how this has come about. Liz Friedman?
Thanks, Bill. It's good to be here. And it's an exciting moment. I was actually able to be at the Boston Chamber event last week and to hear the speaker say this in front of a very large and a prominent crowd. It was a thrilling moment. We've gotten to this point because of the very effective advocacy work that the coalition has done in partnership with AIM, with the Associated Industries of Massachusetts and other partners across the state. And really, it has to do with the speaker's ongoing commitment to issues like this. He was one of the leads in passing the trans bill, the pay equity bill last session, and he's continuing in those efforts to prioritize bills like the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act. And for him to come out so strongly about it so early in the session, I think, is a wonderful sign both to the Commonwealth, to the constituents of the state, but also at the national stage that Massachusetts is not going to back down from what we believe in so strongly.
The Pregnant Women's Protection Act has been on the legislative agenda for many years. How long has it been, and what has changed?
Well, it's an interesting thing, actually. The Pregnant Workers Fairness Act was just introduced last session.
Oh, really?
Just last session. So when you actually look at this bill, when you look at pay equity, how many years? Over a decade. Right? And when we looked at earned paid sick time, that was about the same. Raising the minimum wage, really a large and long fight. Pregnant Workers Fairness Act was actually fast-tracked in many, many ways. So I spoke with Representative Ellen Story about it summer, where were we, 2017, 16, 15, summer 2014. We introduced it into that last session, starting in 2015. And we went straight to Labor and Workforce. We were one of the first bills to be heard by Chairman Sybeck.
That's the Committee on Labor and Workforce?
That's the Committee on Labor Workforce, and Chairman Sybeck from South Hadley and Senator Wolf from the Cape were the leads in that committee. They heard the bill the same day as the pay equity bill, and they released it out of committee within a week, which is unheard of, 1 week.
So was it voted on last session, or did it just sort of die at the committee level?
It was at the committee level, and then it was added to the jobs bill that came out last June, July. They were really working on that. So it was added to the House bill, but was withdrawn by Rep. Story. And then Senator Lovely added it to the jobs bill. On the Senate side, it passed. It then went to committee. But as you recall, last legislative session, we got really squeezed at the very end. And the Senate's bills had an enormous number of amendments, while the House bills had much less. And it died in committee that week, right before. And actually, it wasn't until 11:40 p.m. on July 31st that we found out that it had died.
In the Associated Press story this morning, Dateline Boston, there is a graph that says the legislation had run into resistance from business groups in the past, and then goes on to give the statement from Richard Lord, President and Chief Executive of the trade group Associated Industries of Massachusetts, who said that the group now has come around to supporting the bill. Has that been what has lessened the logjam here?
Well, you know, it's with bills like this, we always have to be speaking directly to the business community and understanding what their perspectives are. When you look at the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act nationally, we've got chambers and business organizations that have come to the table. This legislation has been passed with bipartisan support across the country. And when we brought it to the business community here, they had some serious and important concerns that we did look at in depth, and their concerns, and they were able to partner with us and say that yes, we will do one of the strongest bills at the national level. So Massachusetts, when this bill passes, will have one of the best bills, and it will be in large part because of our conversations with the business community.
So let me, in that regard, quote one or two sentences from the story this morning. The compromise includes more business-friendly language that would exempt employers who can demonstrate that compliance would create, quote, undue hardship for their businesses, defined as a significant difficulty or expense. And that seems to have allowed the pro-business lobby to say, yes, we're on board here. We're really not against pregnant women. We really want to accommodate pregnant women in the workforce. If it's going to cost us, I guess, enormously for reasons that are hard to imagine, but if it does, then, and if we can prove it, then the bill does not require us to go along with this language. But for most pregnant women in the workforce in Massachusetts, they will be covered, yes?
Yes, and but the thing that's interesting about that is, first, most business owners and most businesses are already doing the right thing by pregnant women. They, it's what we've been trained to do from the very beginning of, as we were young children, we've been always told to, that we stand up for a pregnant woman, right? So most business owners are doing the right thing.
Literally stand up, give them your seat.
Stand up and give them your seat. Exactly, that's right. That's what we do, right? We take care of folks who are dealing with illness and folks who are pregnant, and it's part of our normal culture. So for most businesses, that's already the case. There are some bad actors who need a clear policy in place. And for any business where it is undue hardship.
Any employer, any business.
Any business, any employer,
Okay.
right. That if it's undue hardship, but on the most part, what are we talking about? We're talking about extra bathroom breaks, a stool to sit on, access to water. We're not talking about things that overall cost anything. Perhaps it's a one-time expense of buying a stool, that maybe costs $100. So on the most part, we're not anticipating that there will be an undue burden to business, and that business will need to, for those businesses, those few businesses that are not accommodating pregnant workers, they will need to do so.
I'd like to talk about the politics a little bit more if we could, and we should note we are speaking with Liz Friedman from Northampton, who has been a lead advocate for the Pregnant Women's Protection Act. In this AP story this morning, there is this sentence: the Hadley-based advocacy group Mother Woman, which has long pushed for better working conditions for pregnant women, lauded the compromise bill. Quote, we are excited that we've reached agreement on how to level the playing field for the hardworking women of Massachusetts, the group said in a statement. You, as Friedman, told us about a coalition that has worked hard for passage of this bill. What's the coalition? Who are the groups, and what are their interests?
Well, as the former program director of Mother Woman, when I was in that role, one of the things that we decided we wanted to do after the passage of the minimum wage and the earned paid sick time legislation that we played a role on in Western Massachusetts, we decided that we wanted to take on a piece of legislation. So we addressed this piece, in particular, reviewing it with the University of Massachusetts Public Policy Department. Brought that to Rep. Story's attention, and we applied to the Women's Fund of Western Mass for financial support to pursue this bill, and they provided that. And the Women's Fund is very wise in terms of collaboration and really ensuring that we partner. And it's the only way to get a bill like this passed. And being in the western part of the state, you always have to think strategically about who your partners are in the eastern part of the state and just across the state in general. So we were able to develop a coalition that included the ACLU of Massachusetts, the AFL-CIO, Unite Here Local 26 that represents hospitality workers was also a very key partner, Massachusetts Employment Lawyers Association, the Women's Bar Association, and Western Mass Jobs for Justice, and on and on and on, so that we were able to create a coalition that really could bring true power to this advocacy for the bill. In addition, we brought in an organization as one of our key early partners by the name of A Better Balance that are out of New York City, but work nationally on passing Pregnant Workers Fairness Act and paid sick times and paid leave bills across the country.
When do you think the bill will come up for a vote?
I'm very hopeful it will be soon. The speaker was very clear that he was expediting the bill. Then I spoke with the new chair of Labor and Workforce, and he said that he is hopeful that it will be at the top of the docket. So we're hopeful that we will really see movement on this bill. And I'm hoping, I'd love it by Mother's Day, but I think if we get it by July 4th, we'll be in really good shape. That's my hope.
Because that would be the summer recess for the legislature and needs to be passed before then. I'm going to make an assumption, but maybe it's not warranted. I think it is. Charlie Baker's going to sign this bill, the governor?
Well, I haven't spoken to Charlie Baker. I've spoken to a couple of folks in his office. They are waiting to see what the final language is. In the Globe article, there was some indication that he would support it, as well as Senate President Rosenberg. But I think they're both waiting to see what the final language is to make that determination.
That has been the governor's position on almost every bill, so as to not have to take a position, I think. There's some efficacy, I think, to it. He says, I'm not going to take a position until I see what the final language of a proposed law is.
That's right.
But he can say whether he in general supports the idea.
Yes, and I don't know if, I haven't seen a statement to that effect, but I would have to say that there's not many people who are against supporting pregnant women to have a seat or to have a water bottle. And again, it's been supported by Republican governors across the country. I think this even could be one bill that we could pass at the federal level.
Really? Is there any movement afoot for that?
Well, it's been at the federal level for a number of years.
Really?
And it is now passed in over 15 states across the country, many which voted for our current president and with Republican leadership. And both at the governor's level as well as at the House and Senate levels. So I actually think this is something that we could see some movement on.
So is it your hope that the Massachusetts bill will be the model bill going across the country and going forward?
It is my hope, because one of the things that the Massachusetts bill has that many of the bills across the country do not have are protections for mothers who are who are pumping milk for their babies. And we're going to lose some of those protections if we lose the Affordable Care Act. So the Massachusetts bill will actually ensure some protections that may not be in place if the ACA is repealed.
So these are legal protections. Leave aside the ACA for a moment. There are legal protections so that women at work can go to a private place and pump breast milk?
That's right.
And that's in this bill?
That's in this bill.
So
it's considered an accommodation, a pregnant worker's accommodation, and we extended that through that postpartum period where mothers at work would need to be able to pump milk.
We have less than a minute left. This has been a really positive and energizing and affirming discussion, and I really appreciate it. But what's going to happen to this bill and its protections if the ACA is revoked and repealed?
Well, if the ACA is revoked, there's some language in there that ensures protections around lactating moms who are pumping at work. We don't know if those will be included in whatever is the new bill, but assuming that they are eliminated, then of course we need to bring those protections to the state level. And so in Massachusetts, women would have those protections with the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act.
Massachusetts as a model with the states as the laboratories of democracy. Thank you, Liz Friedman, a leader and a lead advocate for the Pregnant Women's Protection Act. Thank you for all your work. Congratulations on your success. We're proud of you, and we are grateful for all you've done.
Thank you, Bill.